Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, we are previewing the upcoming 2020-2021 season for the New Orleans Pelicans. However, before I get too far into it, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all of the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. Without further ado, let's talk some Pelicans. However, before we can truly preview what the season could look like for the Pels, we have to talk about what they did in this past offseason. They were one of the more active teams in the NBA, and it started with them sending out Jrue Holiday in exchange for Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, the 24th overall pick, 2 future first-round picks, and 2 future pick swaps. Now, clearly, this was a gigantic move. They got rid of an expiring contract, and they brought in loads and loads of value. Eric Bledsoe is a player that's been thrown under the bus a lot lately, but he's still a guy that can help you win in the regular season, and that is something that is a big goal for the Pelicans as they look to make a playoff run. George Hill was a guy that they were able to flip in the Steven Adams trade to bring in another experienced veteran. And honestly, getting all of the draft assets for the future was the primary reason why the Pelicans did this deal, and they did about as well as they possibly could have. I don't think that anyone thinks that Jrue Holiday is worth 2 future first and 2 pick swaps, but the Pelicans were able to create a great enough market for him that they were able to receive so much extra value than anyone ever could have predicted that they would have. So overall, that was a really nice trade for them, and I think that it was a win-win for both sides, actually, as in my last video, I talked about why I really liked that move for Milwaukee as well. Next, they sold pretty much all of their current second-round picks in this past draft in exchange for future second-round picks. They traded the 42nd pick, the 39th pick, and then the 60th pick was included in the Jrue Holiday trade. So they came into the draft with 3 second-round picks, and they left with none. For this season, at least. They did acquire the future second-round picks, obviously, but the only draft move that they made was taking Kiera Lewis with the 13th pick. That was a pick that I liked quite a bit because I view Lonzo Ball as more of an off-the-ball player. We'll talk about those two a bit more later. And the last trade that they really made in this offseason was the whole gigantic trade for Steven Adams, where they gave up basically every cheap young player on their team plus George Hill in exchange for Steven Adams. They also brought in a future first-round pick that they, in exchange for the 24th overall pick from Denver, that future first was also included in the Steven Adams trade. So overall, this is a really reshaped roster, but they still have their young core intact with Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and Scion Williamson. Let's start previewing this season, and I'll give my thoughts and expectations on what I think that every player on this roster could bring to the Pelicans in this upcoming season. As always, we'll start at the point guard position. And the first guy I want to talk about here is the newly acquired Eric Bledsoe. Now, I get it. Bledsoe is a much maligned player. He struggled in the past 3 postseasons for the Bucks, and I don't know that he will ever be able to be as strong of a contributor in the postseason as he is in the regular season. But in order for me to make that statement, he has had to establish himself as a really good regular season player, and he has been. The past couple seasons, he's averaged around 15 points per game, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds. In each of the last 2 years, was a borderline all-star level player in the Eastern Conference. In my opinion, probably should have made it in the 2018-19 season. He's an absolute pit bull on the defensive end of the floor, made 2 all-defensive teams during his time with the Bucks, is great at the point of attack, has added a skill where he's able to contest jump shots from behind at a very high level, an underrated skill that people don't talk about much, but he does it as well as anyone in the league. And that is certainly valuable as it allows him to become a really good pick and roll defender who can afford to go over a lot of screens that other players would struggle to get around. So overall, I think that Eric Bledsoe is going to be a really, really good player for this team due to his defense at the point of attack and ability as a slasher on the offensive end of the floor. I don't love the fit with Scion Williamson, and since that's the player that they really are building around, it's not a perfect guy to have, but he is going to help this team win, like I said before, and that has to be a goal for a Pelicans team that really wants to make the playoffs and get their young core some playoff experience. Lonzo Ball is the next guy I would like to talk about here. I think that he's more likely to play a lot of the two this season, with Eric Bledsoe and Kiera Lewis also being point guards on the team. And I think that that's actually a better fit for Lonzo because, similar to someone like Ben Simmons, Lonzo functions best as a playmaker in the fast break. Once he gets in the half court, he's not as effective. Now, obviously, Lonzo Ball isn't quite the athlete that Ben Simmons is. He doesn't have the skill as a finisher, and on the defensive end, while Lonzo is very good, he's not quite at the same level as Ben Simmons. However, like I said before, he's terrific in transition, and for a team that is as athletic and has a chance to be as lethal running the court as the Pelicans are, with super high-level athletes like Eric Bledsoe, Scion Williamson, that kind of playmaker is very valuable to a team like this. Ball also took a step forward in his three-point shooting, as we saw him take a jump from the low 30s to a 37.5% mark there. So I think that he is a nice player for this team. I'm not sure that I would give him a max extension, which there's a chance that he will be looking to get heading into his restricted free agency next year. But I do think that he's a high-value player and someone that, at the right price tag, the Pelicans should look to keep around for their long-term future. Kiera Lewis is the next guy. They selected him with the 13th pick. Lewis is a super crafty point guard. He's very fast, has really great burst off the bounce, and that's going to allow him to be able to get in the lane. And he's also a pretty good passer, good shot creator for his teammates. He can also shoot the three at a high level. He had a great season this past year at Alabama, was one of the better players in the entire SEC. So I like this pick for the Pelicans. He's also a pretty good defender at the point of attack. I'm not sure that the defense will translate at as high of a level as something like his shooting and playmaking will. Because of his wiry frame, he's going to have to get stronger in order to guard players at the point of attack at the NBA level. However, we've seen players like him that come into the NBA too skinny thrive in NBA strength and conditioning systems. So I think that there's a chance that he can reach that level that he was at Alabama on defense once again, a couple seasons into his professional career. Overall, Kiera Lewis is going to be a solid guy off the bench for this team, and I hope that he gets plenty of opportunity to flash his ability as a great transition player and solid playmaker in the half court. The last point guard on this roster is Tony Carr. He's a sharpshooter out of Penn State, can kind of play the one or the two. I haven't seen him play much at all since his time at Penn State, so I won't go too far into him. There's also a chance that since he's on a non-guaranteed contract, he will not even be on this roster once the season starts. So once again, not too much reason to spend much time talking about him. Moving on to the wing positions, the first guy to talk about here is clearly Brandon Ingram. Ingram is a terrific scoring wing. He has great size and really solid athleticism, which allows him to score the ball at a very high level. He also took a huge step forward in his three-point shooting this past season, becoming a 39% shooter from the arc. That allowed him to really become an all-star level player, and he actually made his first all-star team this past year. So clearly Brandon Ingram is a great player. He's still fairly young, as he's just recently signed his second contract, and he's one of the two players that this team seems to really be building around with him and Scion Williamson. Where he needs to improve is in his playmaking. He has not been great in that aspect of the game, and if he can take that leap, then there's a chance that we could see him step into Jason Tatum type star level contributions to his team. He also needs to improve on the defensive end of the floor, but because of his scoring ability, he's already a great player. Those would pretty much just be cherries on the sundae, taking him from being an all-star to maybe as high as a top 10 player in the NBA. The next player to talk about here on the wing is J.J. Redick, who has just been reunited with his former coach with the Orlando Magic, Stan Van Gundy. Redick is an elite shooter, knocks down shots off of things like pin downs and dribble handoffs, which allows him to really create shots for himself despite not being a good athlete or a great ball handler or anything. He's just a great enough shooter that he's able to knock down shots even without much space. That is super valuable to a Pelicans team that needs as much spacing as they can get around their star players like Brandon Ingram and Scion Williamson. On the defensive end, he's not great, but he fights and plays hard, especially with the institution of Stan Van Gundy as the head coach. I think that we'll see him really be working on that end. I heard in an interview he was complaining a little bit. He's like, how the heck did I get back to having Stan Van as my coach after all these years? He did not sound too happy about it, but that was mostly just a joke. JJ is an elite floor spacer, and that brings a lot of value to a young team like the Pelicans. He's also a great vet to have in the locker room. I do think that there's a chance that we could see the Pelicans move on from him at the trade deadline, especially if they are not in the running to make a playoff run. If that is the case, then they could probably extract a solid late first-round pick in exchange for Redick. And as this team is still very young, that would be a probably wise move to do instead of just letting him walk in free agency following the season. Next guy to talk about here is Josh Hart. Hart has emerged as a really solid role player, does a really good job on the defensive end, where he's clearly a plus defender, is a good rebounder for a guard. Both on the offensive end and the defensive end, he rebounds at a high level. Very smart player, does great in defensive rotations, can guard some of the bigger wings in the NBA, not at the highest of levels, but he fights on that end, and that's super important. He's become a league average three-point shooter. In his rookie season, he shot it at 39%. That has gone down significantly the past couple of years. Last year, he shot 34% from the three-point line, which is still solid, still league average. But in order for him to really become the high-level role player he's capable of being, he's going to have to improve that shot further. Overall, though, he can give you good minutes off the bench and can also start in a pinch depending on the health of your other players, which is an important guy to have on the roster considering that it's 2020 and who really knows how what the availability of each player is going to be night in and night out with COVID-19 out there. Mikhail Alexander-Walker is the next guy. He had a tough rookie season, shot the ball super inefficiently, was pretty bad on the defensive end of the floor, was pretty turnover prone. There's not a whole lot of great takeaways you can take away from this rookie year for Alexander Walker. However, he did show that athleticism and show that potential to become a good playmaker and scoring guard that the Pelicans still are going to have faith in him, and he's still going to get rotational minutes on this young team. I'm not the biggest fan of his, and I don't know that it's going to end up working out. But he's still young, still has plenty of room to grow, and I think that we'll see if he can achieve that growth in this 2020 season. Cinderius Thornwell is really the last guy on the wing here. Not much to say about him. Had a great college career at NC State and really has not contributed much during his time in the NBA. He is okay defensively, but on the offensive end, he's turnover prone. He's an inconsistent shooter, doesn't have much value in shot creation. This guy is going to be mostly just the end of the bench player who doesn't get too many minutes for the Pelicans, so we'll move on from him without going too far into it. At the big man positions, it has to start with Scion Williamson. Zion is one of the best transition players in the entire NBA, finishes at the rim at a very high level. He's up there in the same tier as players like LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo in the open court. He's also a really good rebounder, both on the offensive side and the defensive side, and he's able to use that to create extra shots for his team, which of course is quite valuable. Where Zion needs to improve is in his conditioning. He wasn't able to stay in shape this past year, which made him struggle to really play as many minutes as you would like to see him play if you are a Pelicans fan. And he also really struggled on the defensive end, wasn't able to keep guys in front of him, was a clear net negative on that end of the floor. So he's going to have to improve there, but if he can, then we might have an all-NBA level player on our hands here with Scion Williamson. There's a reason why he was the most hyped prospect since Anthony Davis. It all comes down to whether or not he's able to get that conditioning under control. But if he can, watch out NBA, because this guy has a chance to be special. And the Pelicans, with him alongside Brandon Ingram, as well as all the future draft capital that they have, are really starting to build a solid team with that young core. The next big man on the list is Steven Adams. Adams came over in a trade from the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think that Adams is a really good center, probably top 10-ish in the league. He rebounds at a ridiculously high level, one of the better offensive rebounders in the entire NBA. We saw him be a somewhat valuable player to the Thunder this past season. In the regular season, he was fantastic, but he really struggled in the playoffs. He had visibly lost a step on the defensive end of the floor, so his shot protection abilities were clearly not at the same level that they had been throughout the rest of his time in OKC. He's played a lot of minutes, and it's really started to take a toll on him. On the offensive end, he can't shoot, doesn't space the floor whatsoever, is really just an offensive rebounder who can finish at the rim. And while that is a valuable player, and he's overall a pretty good offensive player because of that rebounding ability, on a team that already struggles with spacing because of players like Scion Williamson and Eric Bledsoe, I don't think that he was the ideal center to fit into this starting lineup. And I really didn't love this move too much for the Pelicans, but Adams is a good player. He's a good vet to have in the locker room, and if you are the Pelicans, you have to be hoping that the combination with him and Zion ends up working out than many people believe that it will. Jackson Hayes was a first-round pick for the Pelicans last season. I actually think that he was a bit overhated for his rookie year. He did a solid job protecting the rim. On the offensive end, he finished at the basket at a high level. He needs to improve it, a jump shot if he wants to become a floor spacing big. If he doesn't, that's really going to limit how good of a player he can eventually become. But as a rim runner and rim protector alone, that's a pretty valuable starting center to have. I'm not sure I would have invested the 8th overall pick into Jackson Hayes, but he's a good athlete and like I said before, protects the rim very well. So hopefully we can see continued growth from him and he can become a legit starting center in the NBA and kind of take some of those minutes away from Steven Adams. The next guy here is Nicole O'Melley. O'Melley can play the 4 and the 5. He's a solid floor spacer. Shot the ball 33% from the arc last year, which is decent for a big man. On the defensive end, he's okay, but not anything special, pretty much just replacement level. On the offensive end, like I said before, is decent spacing the floor, but doesn't bring a whole lot of value outside of that. Doesn't score much off of shots he creates for himself, really. Any type of scoring you get from him is off of assists, and because of that, alongside him just being a mediocre defensive player, I would have liked to see them try to hang on to the young players that they gave up in the Steven Adams trade and instead just use Nicole O'Melley's contract in order to make the salaries work. However, they clearly see some value in him as a stretch big man, and we'll see if he is able to really get rotational minutes in this crowded front court. The next guy is Wendy and Gabriel, who I'm actually a pretty big fan of. A very switchable big guy who can guard multiple positions on the perimeter. That's super valuable in a switch-heavy scheme, and I think that Gabriel is going to be able to adjust on the offensive end of the floor a bit better than he has thus far in his NBA career, because I've seen him shoot jump shots before, and I think that there's a chance that his jumper can reach like a 36 or 37% mark from the three-point line. And if he can do that, then you've got a switchable defender who can shoot the three. That's a good rotational guy, and I like the fact that the Pelicans were able to get him on a cheap minimum deal for this upcoming season. Next player would be Willie Hernan Gomez. Hernan Gomez is a guy who is kind of a dying breed in the NBA as a big man who can score in the paint and rebounds at a high level, but is not very good defensively and has not developed a jump shot thus far in his NBA career. I think that if he can develop that jump shot because of his rebounding ability, then he can be a solid backup center for a team, but if the jumper never comes along, then this is really just a guy who's going to be an end-of-the-bench player. The last two guys, I believe, are both on non-guaranteed contracts, Jared Utoff and Ike Enigbo. Not too much to say about these guys. I'm pretty sure they both did very well in G League stints in the past couple seasons, and they are on non-guaranteed contracts, training camp invites for the upcoming season. We'll see what they are capable of doing there, but I would not expect them to get any playing time whatsoever for this Pelicans team in the upcoming year. Overall, the Pelicans are an interesting team to me. They still have some veterans that would have some value in the trade market, such as JJ Redick. I think that there's a chance that they could move on from Lonzo Ball before he hits restricted free agency in next year's offseason. They have a really good coach in Stan Van Gundy, and they also have players that are really good, such as Brandon Ingram and Scion Williamson, Steven Adams, Lonzo Ball, Eric Bledsoe. That's a really good starting five right there. I just don't know that the depth is anything too special, and with the chances that they could be trading away some of their players, I don't think that this team is as good as many do. I think they're probably going to end up finishing somewhere between 11th and 13th in the Western Conference. In a regular season, I would say that they're probably like a 32 to 35 win team. So in this year's shortened season, my win prediction for them is somewhere between 27 and 30 wins. I get what people like about this team, and I think that Brandon Ingram is a really high-level player. I just don't see how the pieces fit together with this team, and I don't think that they are going to be making the playoff run that some people believe that they're capable of making, especially with the improved depth in the Western Conference, as we've seen teams like Portland, Phoenix take big jumps, and I think that those teams are clearly going to be part of the playoff picture. I'd say that the best case scenario for this Pelicans team for this year is they make a push and make the play-in tournament, where maybe they'll be able to end up making it into the playoffs as the 7 or 8 seed, and hopefully they can take a game off of obviously the 1st or 2nd seed in the Western Conference. I'm sorry, Pelicans fans, I'm not as high on this team as many are, but I do think that they have a very bright future with the combination of good young players like Lonzo, like B.I., like Zion. Kiera Lewis can be thrown into that group as well at this point. And also with all the future draft capital that they have. So overall, a bright future, but I'm not sure that the present is going to be as good as many believe it to be. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments section below what you think the Pelicans record will be for this upcoming season. I think that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.